Doing a video today on the old Pennsylvania line near where I grew up in northern Clinton County, southern Carroll County. This line goes into Frankfort, Indiana, and it's called the Vandalia Line, owned by the Pennsylvania Railroad originally. It came out of Frankfort going north, and it connected Logansport to Terre Haute, and that gave the Pennsylvania Railroad access to St. Louis from New York City, they say. It ran when I was a young man. It was abandoned after Conrail took over in the 80s. Some of the tracks here, some of the track is pulled up and gone. But I aim to kind of retrace what used to go, some of the little towns that went through. It's might be interesting to some people. If not, this is not the video for you then, I guess. Back again, this is the old trestle that goes over Kilmore Creek. Someone had told me that they had left the trestles intact, just taken up all the track and left the roadbed. But this is a neat old looking, still looks like it's in real good shape too. Have no idea when the bridge is built, or the piers still look to be in good shape. I'm near the town of Kilmore. It didn't actually go through the town of Kilmore. It went right to the west of it. But interesting. Of course, this is not really a steel trestle. It's concrete and steel, so that may have been more to remove it than they wanted to do. Still a neat old trestle. This is the little town of Kilmore. It's got a really nice cemetery. Put a lot of effort into this. I mean, it is nicely done. It's a very old cemetery. The trestle, there is Kilmore Creek, and the trestle was back, eighth of a mile on down the creek. Kilmore is a town. The large church has a cemetery. There are about a dozen homes. Not a very large town at all. Nicely settled though. This road that goes north-south through here is actually called Kilmore Blacktop. I don't remember why the town is called Kilmore and the creek is named Kilmore too. I believe it was after the first postmaster or someone who settled here early that took his name. But that's about it for here. This is the old Moran school. I'll take you through the town of Moran here in a minute. This school was an intermediate school for the 4th, 5th, and 6th, and then 5th, 6th, and 7th, and 8th grade for Rossville School Corporation. And it used to be a 2-story building, big old brick one as you can see. And 1965 there were the Palm Sunday tornadoes in Indiana, and this school was hit. The tornado had gone about 40 miles from south of Lafayette through the town of Mulberry. It hit the town of Moran here and kept going west. And I grew up about 2 miles from here. And I was 7 years old at the time, about to be 8. And I can remember that afternoon, it was about 6, 7 o'clock in the afternoon, and the terrible storm and got to glance out the window and see the tornado to the north of us about a mile or so. And before everyone was, told to get in the basement. But I'll remember that day for the rest of my life. I've been through 4 tornadoes, and I'm 62 now. I've been through 4 tornadoes, and let me tell you, I don't want to go through another one. But that's part of Indiana, I guess. But the construction company bought the shell of the building and took off the 2nd story and made a roof on it and made a kind of a home out of it for a large family. And he lived there and ran a construction company. I don't know who owns it now, but they fixed it up nice. That's a good deal. This is the old right-of-way as the railroad went through Moran. Went onto that property over there. Moran's about twice the size of Kilmore, and just one of those little burgs sitting out in the country next to the Interstate 75 and just the county roads here. Well, this is a look at the trackage as it came into Sedalia, another little town. And this is looking north. And this is the old Sedalia grain elevator that track used to serve. There along the main building, they had a spur, and they could put about 3 hopper cars in there at the most, maybe 4. And they used to load out hopper cars. And the Pennsylvania used to run a local about every other day and service the elevator. There was a lumber yard that set over here. It was called the Barnard Lumber Yard. And there was a spur down to it. They used to get a hopper car of coal or coke, as they called it. And back in the 60s and 50s, everyone still burned, coal for heat in the wintertime. And they would get their coal shipped in by railroad car. And like I said, there was a spur down to it. And lumberyard's all gone. Doesn't look like the grain elevator is going today, but it's not harvest season, so it may be seasonal nowadays. But it used to be this was going all the time, every day except for Sunday. Kind of sad to see. But the railroad kind of veered a little bit to the west as it went north, and it went up to a town called Cutler. And that's the next stop as far as the railroad. While in Sedalia, there was a company called WLC Company. It's not the same as this one. It didn't do heating and cooling. It did basically watering systems like water troughs and feed bins and things like that. They made them out of galvanized steel. And this whole old building here was the company. It moved to Frankfort when it outgrew the space, and just beyond, about where the WLC is today, used to be a grocery store there called Mockerman's. There's 2 brothers. One ran the store here in Sedalia, one ran a store in Cutler, and they're probably both been gone a long time. And next to it was the post office, which I don't know if they still have a post office here or not. It looks like there's something there beside the WLC, and I see the post office box out in front, so that may be the post office now. Glad to see it's still there at least. And Sedalia is, Kilmore's small, Moran's about twice the size of Kilmore. Sedalia is about 3 times the size of Moran, but it's still small. It used to be a high school here, but I think it closed back around World War II or so. It was falling down when I knew it, and it's not even there anymore. I drove by and looked. But we'll proceed up to Kilmore. Up to Cutler. Okay, well, I'm at the middle fork of the Wildcat Creek. And there's another trestle here. Wasn't too hard to get to. It looks very much like the one over Kilmore Creek. Get around here. You can see quite a bit of a log jam. Still looks to be in fairly decent shape. Of course, I'm no engineer. Has a handrail like the other. That looks like concrete, but that is steel. Actually, that is concrete. So these abutments are all concrete. And there is a pier over there on the other side. You can barely see it through the brush. And it's really a large abutment here. There's a pier down there that rests on. They put some time and effort into these. These are some more iron bridges sitting on concrete piers. They actually poured a lot of concrete on the decking. And there are spots where they're missing, but overall it looks pretty good. Now the South Fork, the railroad crosses the South Fork of the Wildcat just north of Frankfort, and I was going to get a picture of the trestle there, but it was murder just trying to get up to the old rail bed, and I mean it was just about impassable to get through. That'd be something I want to try in the winter time or when the bushes are down. You can see here this is pretty thick, and this isn't near as bad as what I just walked through getting here, but this whole rail bed is supposed to be a trail for like snowmobiles in the wintertime and walking in the summertime, but the state sure hasn't gotten around to doing anything to it. I've seen a few deer stands on the roadbed, you know, on the trees, but other than that no one uses this at all. It's kind of a shame. Now we're at the town of Cutler, and as you can see this depression out here in front of me, that's where the roadbed was. They actually had this hillside and they did a cut into it. It's been filled back in now for the road purpose. The depression's still on the other side, but they cut this all out, had it dug out, and they had about a 4-foot high bridge that was about 15 feet across, built a wooden bridge built to get the rest of the height he needed so the trains could pass under and not hit it. And it was an awkward bridge. It wasn't very long. It was steep going up to the deck, and if you weren't careful and slowed down, you bottom out your car or truck on it, and actually you could kind of do an Evel Knievel kind of thing and go up one side and go flying. I think about 20 years ago, the bridge was still there for a long time after they abandoned the railroad, but they finally got around to tearing it down and they filled this all back in. But on down just a bit is the old Cutler grain elevator. And I don't know who owns it now. But used to be they would spot cars here too for them to load out with grain. Town of Kilmore, really nice little town. It's got a nice antique shop. I think there's a lodge here. I think there's a grocery store still. There's a truck just like mine over there in the driveway. How about that? Nice homes here. It's about the size of Moran. It's right by Highway 675. And next stop, if I can do it, I'm going to be going down to the Wildcat Creek, the North Fork, and maybe see the trestle there, if it's still there. Well, I'm back. Kind of looking at the piers on this one. This is the North Fork of the Wildcat Creek. And supposedly this bridge is the reason they abandoned, Conrail abandoned the line. It was damaged in a flood, and they figured it would cost, for no more revenue that they made off this local line here, the revenue wouldn't be worth fixing it, and that's why they abandoned it, supposedly. That pier looks pretty good, and this is steel with concrete bed sitting on it. So first bridge I've come to that I could actually get down the side here, for having that cut there in Cutler to make it low enough to, I'm about 45-50 feet up in the air from the gully here I'm standing in. Wouldn't want to take a tumble down that. But yeah, this side of that pier looks pretty good too. All the concrete on the sides here is gone, and it hasn't fell down there, so I don't know, maybe that was wood they used here. But we'll walk out here a ways. This is probably the easiest walking on the trail I've had today. All the other places, either no one uses it, or I don't know, that's not kept up. But this is the North Fork of the Wildcat. Of the three, the south, the north, and the middle, the north is by far the largest. This goes clear over through Kokomo, which is probably 40 miles away, and it's just as big there as it is here. And it's not always this tame, I guess you'd say. Usually when it gets up out of the banks, it's nasty. But really, deck all seems really good. I noticed in this roadbed too, a lot of this black rock with the ballast. I don't know where that, there's not a lot of that black rock around here. I don't know where they ship that in from. Not quite sure. You can see banks coming up a little bit here on the far side. And we're at the other. Let's see if I can take a look at it from over here. Without falling down. Well, this pier here looks fairly decent. I'm not going to try to walk down there because that is steep. Everything looks intact here. They told me this bridge had shifted or something had happened to it during a flood. Like a log jam or something, a tree floated down and hit the bridge and damaged it. Everything looks pretty good here. But like I said before, I'm no engineer either, so train weighs a lot. But if you go to the right, you go to Highway 75. If you go to the left, this thing snakes its way back and forth a lot. By the crow flies, I'm about, I don't know, quarter of a mile from Adams Mill. It's over in a little town called Wildcat, or used to be called Boulevard. About a quarter of a mile, but as the creek goes, it might be a half mile, 3/4 of a mile. It snakes around so much. Seems to be pretty straight right here though. And if you like catfish, Wildcat Creek, North and South Forks, especially when the South Fork gets a little wider towards Lafayette, excellent catfish. They're in there. Well, I'll walk back to the truck and we'll head on up to the Bringhurst, which is the end of the line. Well, I hope you can hear me in the wind, but I am south of Bringhurst, Indiana, and this is the end of the trip for me, I guess. This rail here, I'm looking south, goes about half a mile and then it stops. That's where the abandonment begins. And all it is, it gives these fellows room to switch cars at the co-op fertilizer place. This is the reason the track stayed here like it did. These customers built here before they tried to abandon the line. And with Flora just being slightly north of there, and there was a few customers on the north side of Flora, they decided to go ahead and keep the line going down to here. Conrail doesn't operate. Conrail doesn't exist anymore, and it's some local little railroad services this now. As far as like the elevator at Cutler and Sedalia, when the Pennsylvania ran it, they would run a local like every other day, and if you needed your car's service moved, they would handle that. When Pennsylvania went bankrupt in the early 70s, the government started Conrail, which kind of merged every bankrupt railroad they could get hold of into one, and they called it Conrail. And for feasibility, a lot of the, if they had like 3 routes that went to the same place, and you know, none of them, the individual railroads were vying against each other and not making any money. It made more sense to have one railroad service it, like Conrail, and abandon the other 2 lines since they didn't need them. And that's basically what happened here. They weren't interested in Cutler elevator and Sedalia elevator surviving, and they just got to where they just moved everything by semi. That was okay, but it was a shame to see it go. Originally, this went from Logansport to Terre Haute, and it gave the Pennsylvania easy way to access St. Louis from the north. And a lot of trains. It used to be about 10 trains a day. Later on, when they were in financial trouble, it was 3 or 4. And eventually with Conrail, there was 1, maybe 2. And like I said, eventually they just abandoned it. But it's a sad thing to see a railroad go. But history is what it is. It's been abandoned now for about 30 years. And like I said, it's just a shame. But that's the history of the Pennsylvania and the Conrail. It's called the Vandalia Line. Started at Frankfort, ended up here south of Bringhurst. And just an interesting little, the trails are nice. You walk on bedrock. I mean, it's not mud and anything like that. The ballast of the old ties is all that's still there. But it is overgrown, a lot of weeds. And if you're scared of spiders and spider webs and mosquitoes, it's not for you. But if you're willing to persevere and fight through it, it's not that bad of a deal. Okay, thanks folks.